Welcome back. A big week on Capitol Hill. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former attorney and fixer, he'll be testifying before Congress this week. Tomorrow and Thursday, he'll be speaking at a closed-door hearings before the House as well as Senate Intelligence Committees. But on Wednesday, his testimony before the House Oversight Committee, it will be open to the public and televised live. As they say, get your popcorn ready. Cohen expected to divulge all sorts of juicy details about the Trump organization and Donald Trump himself. And since it is a family business, Trump's adult children could also be implicated in potentially suspect business deals. There's also a lot of questions about the Mueller report itself, not just the when, but also what kind of form it will take. Bob Mueller's former chief of staff, Lisa Monaco, tamping down expectations. Take a listen.
The special counsel has to provide to the Attorney General a confidential report laying out prosecution decisions and, as you point out, decisions not to prosecute. But, the special counsel is going to be, I think, also not very showy.
This will not be the Starr Report Part 2. It
won't. And indeed, the special counsel regulations were drafted in 1999 when I was a young lawyer in the Justice Department, precisely with that in the background and trying to move away from that type of sensational report.
Now, there is also a lot of speculation about what Congress and we, the American public, will actually get to see. Congressman Adam Schiff, he's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and he says Democrats will do what it takes to make sure it, in fact, the report sees the light of day.
We will obviously subpoena the report. We will bring Bob Mueller in to testify before Congress. We will take it to court if necessary. And in the end, I think the department understands they're going to have to make this public.
So for more, let's turn to former Congresswoman Liz Holtzman. The New York Democrat served on the House Judiciary Committee at the height of Watergate, and she's also the author of the new book, The Case for Impeaching Trump. Congresswoman, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's go through this chronologically, if you will. This week, we get the show and tell. Cohen goes and he testifies, and on Wednesday, we're all going to be watching. And there may be some of the salacious details about more extracurricular activities of the president, some, offensive language maybe used, some shady business deals. Do you look at this more as a distraction, or potentially could there be some substance here in the testimony that could either create exposure for the kids or even for the president?
Well, of course, Michael Cohen could tell us some very important details. For example, he might know whether Donald Trump was told beforehand about the infamous meeting with that Donald Trump Jr. had with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. He might know of other dealings that Donald Trump Sr. had vis-a-vis the Russians. Donald Trump Sr. may have confided all kinds of stuff to him about possible collusion, conspiracy, collaboration with the Russians, criminal activity. So there's a lot he could tell. Some of it could be relevant to impeachable efforts by the House of Representatives and the Senate, but some of it could just be material that's derogatory, important for Americans to know, but not necessarily central to whether or not the president should remain in office.
Do you have a strong suspicion about the report itself from Mueller in terms of the form it will take and how much in a post, Starr report, subsequent reports are going to be either more by the book? What do you think, A, the report will be framed as a roadmap, and then B, will we get to see all of it? Do we see an abridged version at the end of the day in 2019? There's no such thing as secrets anymore. We're going to get it one way or another. How's it going to go down?
Well, first of all, there are two things we need to be thinking about. When we talk about roadmap, during Watergate, the Watergate grand jury turned over what I would call a roadmap to the House Judiciary Committee, which was conducting impeachment proceedings. That contained evidence with regard to Richard Nixon and a brief summary of the facts. It did not use adjectives, but it basically set forth a roadmap. That report was authorized by a federal district court judge, and that was given to the House Judiciary Committee, and it was very important in terms of helping us arrive at a conclusion to vote to impeach Richard Nixon, and led to his resignation. Now we have a report by the special counsel. Sadly, in my opinion, that we're always fighting the last war. We're fighting against Kenneth Starr, but we need to be looking at what happened during the Nixon impeachment. I wrote the first special prosecutor bill that required a full disclosure of what the special prosecutor had done so that Congress could make sure and the American people could make sure that there was a full investigation. That's the point of it. We're not getting a little report. This is not like a book report that you write in elementary school. This report has a critical importance to the American people and to Congress and to our democracy. It is supposed to tell why describe the prosecutions, explain the prosecutions, and it's also supposed to explain the declinations. In other words, it's supposed to assure the American people that there was a full inquiry. If the president wasn't indicted, that was because there was no evidence. We have to know the reasons for it. The statement that you just heard with Lisa Monaco, she's a very fine person. But the fact of the matter is, we're not talking about fine people or book reports. We're talking about how our democracy works. If the president of the United States, if there's evidence against him that Mueller found warranting his prosecution for crimes, then the American people need to know about that, and the Congress needs to know about that. The framers of the Constitution created an impeachment power to remove a criminal president from office. And if there's evidence of that, and the government is keeping it secret, that is wrong. So this report has to be framed not in terms of, oh, well, we don't want a Starr report. This report has to be framed in terms of the very purposes of that report, which is to assure the American people that a complete investigation was undertaken, that the decisions that were made by prosecution were warranted, and most important of all, if there is evidence of criminality on the part of the president, that has to be turned over to Congress and the American people.
Where do you see parallels and differences between Watergate and this, and also the tapes? Without the tapes, it would be hard, I think, to, back in Watergate, convince some of the skeptical Republicans. What would the smoking gun have to be here to get some of the Republicans, certainly in the Senate, to go along here and say, yes, we saw a high crime and misdemeanor?
We're not at the Senate yet. We're not even in the House of Representatives. We don't even have an impeachment inquiry yet. So we're not there. What you have, you don't need a smoking gun. Remember, before the smoking gun tape came out, we had the votes of every single Democrat and a third of the Republicans in favor of impeachment. So let's be real about this. You don't need the smoking gun. You need a lot of very solid evidence. Now, we also had, for example, notes that were taken, very careful notes that were taken by Nixon's chief of staff. He was an excellent note taker, and that was a very good bit of evidence. We also had some very important witnesses. There may be several witnesses who have information. There may be emails. There may be a lot of evidence. Maybe it's not the same kind of smoking gun, but it could be another kind of situation where there's substantial evidence. Ultimately, that's the basis on which the American people have to judge their president. What is the evidence? And Mueller really can't keep that hidden from the American people. That would be wrong.
Congressman Holtzman, I always appreciate a few minutes from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, when we come back here, we're going to talk about a story that certainly was an international topic over the last week. That is what happened at the Vatican. Well, an abuse survivor tells us her personal story and also weighs in on the summit at the Vatican that just wrapped up with the church trying to deal with a sexual abuse crisis.